Hey buddies, welcome to AmassGames. My name is Simon. Today I'm going to set up, play and review the game Dungeons and Dragons Onslaught by WizKids. This is a licensed Wizards of the Coast product, so this is obviously the owner of Dungeons and Dragons. It's a high-octane miniatures game by Nicholas Yu and Travis Severance. It's a game whereby it's 2 players only. It's a skirmish game, although you can actually play with more players. There's no co-op mode, there's no solo mode, which I think this game could really use. However, this is a game whereby we're going to have various things come out, various different monsters. We'll be fighting off those monsters and fighting off against each other. It's a game I'm now going to set up in front of you. So I just wanted to make sure I got this board in front of you. It's double-sided, and just be aware there's various terrain, so you cannot go through these kinds of terrains here because there's little white lines, with various raised platforms as well. So there's a scenario guide where you can pick which mission you want to play. I'll be showing you something from that first mission, whereby we're going to have 3 characters each. Normally everyone plays as 5. So you have 5 characters each, and there's also going to be a baddie. In this case, we've got the gnolls going on. I'm guessing that's the pronunciation. So various different scenarios you can play through, and various things you can do. So in this particular game, there is something else to be aware of, whereby you can see terrain. So in this case, if you want to fight somebody, they must be at the same height or lower than you. Basically, if they happen to be higher than you, you cannot attack them because they have cover. Also, there's blocking elements, so you can fight through this or shoot through this, and other areas again whereby it is blocked off. So it does give you an example of who you can start off with. So there's various different characters you can play with. We played with Lightning Dancer last time as well. Set everyone's dials to the tick mark and make sure everybody's on the maximum health. So that should be like this. Everyone's going to take their dials each. So again, you're taking 5, but I'm just going to show you just a couple of these dials so far. So here's the dancer. Here's the Lightning Dancer. We've got Sedona, Sparkle Bang, Grubble Banks, etc. And what I'm next going to show you is various things you're going to be placing out. So you need some dice. I've got some D20s. If you want to see how far your dice roll, check out my playlist. This will be, I think, 102. So check out the playlist for how far dice roll and whether or not you use a dice tray. Obviously, I'm using a standard dice tray all the time to make sure I'm being consistent. There's some more D20s. They don't tell you actually what you need about these, but someone's going to take one set, I guess, and one person takes another. Just like in Dungeons and Dragons, if you roll a 1, you're always going to miss. And if you roll a 20, it's always a success. You're rolling 2 dice. And you're taking a high value, and you've got some modifiers that you can add to it too, which I'll come on to. Any questions, do let me know in the comments best on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. So various characters we can play with. So these happen to be pre-painted, as you can see here. Now, last time I tried to zoom in, it didn't work very effectively. So by all means, please head through to Instagram, whereby I'll have these pictures in a bit more detail. So these do have a certain location where they do go out to. I might just choose to place some out, I don't know, something like this, just to give an example. In the last game, some person did get defeated, so this is going to happen over a number of rounds. It's an 8-round game in most games. However, it is only 6 rounds in the first game. So you're placing 6 rounds, and either you've defeated everybody else, in which case you're going to win. Otherwise, if somebody has defeated any of these baddies, these enemies, then you're going to get yourself 2 points for each baddie you've eliminated, as well as 1 point for each enemy that you've eliminated as well, which is not necessarily a baddie, but they're joint enemies, NPCs. You're also going to take some other things too. So we're going to have that round tracker here. You're going to set it to round 1, depending on which round you're obviously playing in. So obviously round 1 to start off with. And there's other things you can track too, which I don't tend to bother with. Obviously victory points as well. But generally I just stick with 1 round. That's all you need to worry about on that one. Again, loads more characters you can play with. Loads of other stuff here too. So starting off that first player, they're going to take an initiative 1. They're going to place it in front of one of their characters. Everybody knows that this particular character, for example, is going to activate first and do some stuff, moving, attacking. Then you're then going to take the rest of those cards. You're going to shuffle them up and give it, obviously, to your opponent and give them 3 cards. And then you're going to take 2 cards back. So in which case, I'll be going 2nd and 6th. They're going 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And what's going to happen is when you choose to decide which characters you're playing with, so you're going to have, say, like I said, 3 characters each, let's say in this example video. You're going to secretly place these next to each character. So your opponent does not know who you're activating next. In this case, though, 3, 4, 5, I'll be activating all 3 back to back. So they will not be able to respond back until that 6th character has been. However, we've also got those NPCs who are not very NPC-ish because they are attacking back as well. In this case, all NPCs, all these enemies, always attack in between some person's player's turn. So in this case, it's always a 0.5. So it's always going to go between the 5th character and the 6th character based on initiative. And then they'll be doing some damage too. Everybody, each of these different enemies will have an attack too. Again, there's a scenario map here, but of course you can make your own as well. In which case they've got a damage of 14 and protection. And they can move 3 as well. Various things that they can do as well. So what will you be doing on your turn? Like I said, you're dealing out those cards, that's the initiative phase, you're assigning that initiative, and then you're then revealing a card. So in this case, we don't need to reveal because we know who's going first, which could influence where you're placing your cards. If I'm speaking too fast, just slow the video down. I do always recommend a second view. First time just to understand the game a little bit, second time to obviously get a bit more knowledgeable. So what I can do, I could do a standard action. Now what could that standard action be? Well, it could be to fight. In this case, I might be within range. I can check through my character and see that I've got a melee attack here. I've also got a ranged attack. So this allows me to hit something from range 2 to 5 and basically +4 on a roll to do 2 damage. So what I'm going to do now is check to see if I'm in range. Let's say I'm not in range, or let's say I'm attacking this way. And then in case you want to double check who the characters are, you can check. So that's Grubblebanks here. You can have a look on here a little bit, but you can see that it's, for example, Bedlam. So let's say Bedlam can attack. It can attack up here because this is a higher tier, as is this one. Let's say it's out of range. It needed to move, so 1, 2 might be enough. And now it's actually in range. So now it can attack. So what it's going to be doing is, obviously this would have been at full health, so you can max it up and then see what it's attacking at. So it can move up to 4, it's moved within range, doesn't want to move any closer in this instance, and now it's attacking. So let's pick, it's going to pick the ranged attack, so it hits range 2 to 5, that's within range. It's going to do 2 damage if it hits. It has an 11 plus 4 is 15 to hit. We have Grabblebanks over here, let's see if that would have been a hit. By finding Grabbleshanks, sorry. 15 to hit, well we need to double check their character, see whether of course there's enough damage. Let's bring it back up to where it should be at, which is here. It is enough, so it's just enough. 14 would be enough too. And in this case, if ever you have a modifier that makes up to 20, that's not a critical. A critical is always going to do damage as well. In this case, I've done an attack. Well, what does that mean? Well, first up, I can get myself some abilities. So I get myself an XP for doing some damage. You can also get loot out, which I'll come on to in a second. And at the end of activation, you also gain 1. I could have some bonus moves as well. So I've got Curse. So you can target one enemy character or champion at range 1 to 3 to gain Cursed, which I'll come on to. But basically, that is something else I can do. And then in this case, at the end of your activation, you're going to gain 2 as well. So you have a standard move, so a standard action, a move action in any order you like. So in this case, you're typically moving and then attacking. Otherwise, you might want to attack and move, of course, away. Then you've got that bonus action mentioned and any number of free actions. So that bonus action is typically looting. So in this case, we might have some loot. So again, we'd have set this up in advance, obviously out the game or whatever. And what you're going to be doing is sticking your hand in here, and you have various loot tokens that you can play with. And what you're going to be doing is drawing 3 of them, picking one of them and putting the other 2 back in the bag. Or if you don't want to use a bag, use something else. In which case, you happen to reveal, one way around. You reveal 3 different tokens, and you've got these 3. So you're going to pick one of them, put the other 2 back in the bag. Whatever you pick, you can of course keep the card and assign it to one of your characters. You cannot have one of your character have more than 1 card. So in this case, you might take, I don't know, this one, which in this case can obviously be useful for bonuses stuff. This one, when defending against an attack from an enemy beyond range 1, gain 4. So basically for melee, you're going to be gaining some benefits. Any damage you take to these big guys, you can assign damage like this. So it's on 6 damage, 7 damage. We know it can up to 8. So of course 8 would then of course remove it from the game. And of course, what I tend to do is put it on my side of the board. So if I happen to defeat it, of course I know I've got myself 2 points. This is the south side of the board. If they happen to defeat it, they get 2 points. So that's how that works. There's a little kind of player aid as well that you can refer to. And once you've got 5 XP, because when you get a loot token, you gain XP as well, then you can gain yourself one of these cards. There's a couple of cards you can pick between. I happen to pick one of these, which is after you defeat an enemy, you're going to gain 2 health. So that's the kind of card that I picked because at the time I happened to be low on health on my last turn. Most characters may well level up. I generally find they do, most of them at least. It does talk about the potential that you could level up twice, but that doesn't tend to occur. If ever you lose one of your characters from the board, you can place a token on it to show that you've got loot that you can steal. However, I tend to find when you place out a character on the board during setup, place it underneath the character, and when you move it, you kind of know where you've been or where you are. And that's very helpful because sometimes you need to check who you are, which you might not know in the first game or 2, and therefore you can tell exactly who you're meant to be playing as. That's pretty much sums up the game. There's loads more obviously missions and really cool things like there's a young dragon in here, etc. Various other characters you can play with, and various other monsters that can come into play. I have found on I've seen my unboxing teaser trailer preview video. There's this spare XP token. I'm not sure why that's there. And you've also got other token cards as well, such as this. So basically various other kind of champions you can deal with too. So basically I've now shown you the action phase. You're then in the end phase. So once you have had everybody move, you're then going to be going on to refreshing any kind of maybe special abilities you've got. So you've got this such as Hellish Rebuke, which I've used before. After you're damaged, deal an equal amount of damage to the attacker, then knock that down. At the end of everybody taking their turns, after all 6 characters plus the enemies are activated, then everyone can knock this down by 1. So there's like a time counter, whereas anything that's still on tick mode, you are going to leave it on the tick mode. So that's going to be how that's going to work. And then you are going to proceed to round 2 in this instance. So you're going to clock down over here to tick this down to 2. And then what you're going to do is pass that first player marker to your opponent, who is then obviously going to assign that to one of their characters. And then they're going to dish out those other next 5 randomly, and then you're going to go again. So like I said, over the course of 6 rounds, you're trying to defeat your opponents. If you eliminate all 3, then you win. Otherwise, you get out of points. So again, 2 points for these guys, 1 point for your opponent. And of course, see who happens to be the winner. Now, what do I think of the game? So this is a skirmish game. I'm not a huge fan of skirmish games, but I do really like this one. I do prefer it over quite a few others that I've played. My rating is 7.5, which is much higher than average. 6.4 is my average, over 2,000, almost 600 reviews at the time of recording. And this particular one, I do really like it. I like the way you can level up. I like that even though it does have dice, which isn't necessarily good, often you are typically hitting, I'm finding, so it's not a major downfall. The fact that you have other characters in play is nice too. The fact it's pre-painted does have a nice flavour to it. I particularly do like the art on here. I think it does stand up very well from the camera angle I'm looking at. And it doesn't take too long, like I said, 6 to 8 rounds, whatever it might be. In the last game, I happened to have a couple of lucky die rolls. They happened a couple of bad rolls, in which case they managed to eliminate one of theirs, and then they retreated. So the last 2 rounds, it was very quick because they're moving away. All I could do is move. I couldn't attack anything because these guys had gone as well. So it was a bit of a foregone conclusion. That is what can happen in a game. And but apart from that, though, like I said, I do enjoy it. I do think it's quite thematic, and if I'm in the mood for this kind of stuff, this is something I do enjoy. But do let me know, again, via the comments best on YouTube. Also, check out the podcast via the description in YouTube, as well as pictures over on Instagram, also TikTok, X, Threads, and of course, join the discussion on Facebook too. And like I said, the podcast is a good place. I'll be talking about this some more. And again, also the other videos coming out for dice distancing, so make sure you like, subscribe, and share as well. Any downsides? Well, these are quite fiddly, so holding this up and picking up the character board, it's easy to pick this up and they get knocked. These are very thin. It's not necessarily a bad thing, just to be careful. They don't often move, though, when you pick it up, which is a good sign, because sometimes they're too loose. Apart from that, I did mention a little bit about the fact you need to be aware of where locations are, get used to it, and of course who a character is, because they don't necessarily look identical to who is on here. These things can be quite spiky. I have noticed that the paper it's a plastic-free box, apart from obviously the miniatures and the strength that will come in, but apart from, and of course the dice and I guess these bases, and that's it. The thing is though, this, like I said, did pierce through the paper. And the upgrades are good. There's nice options going on here. The loot's fun as well. If anything I can think of, I'll let you know. But so far, it's been a fairly decent experience. I just mentioned, of course, you can get some luck with the dice. But generally speaking, I think there's enough mitigation pretty much there. But it's a standard skirmish game. It doesn't change it up too much. If you're familiar with Gloomhaven, there's a lot of similarities going on there too. Again, once you've got your health down to 0, that's what triggers. And of course, when you do get lower and lower, you do get other factors. So in this case, your movement's less, etc. So that's something to be aware of. But yeah, you can move up to your movement. You can stop early if you want to. You can move through every other character. You can't land on the same space to end your turn as any other character. And enemies do block line of sight. Again, there's the other side of the board. It keeps replayability high. It is a bit tricky to squash back in once you've taken everything out of their paper packages. But there's lots of options. Again, you can mix up who you're playing with, and it does give you some nice starting abilities and starting people to play with. The rulebook's pretty good. It's only a couple of bits whereby I think Rampage or something else whereby I was slightly uncertain on, which is something to be aware of. But if you're familiar with these kind of games, I don't think it'll be a problem. But there we go, like I said, lots of playlists for you to check it out and discover. I do hope you found this of interest. I hope you enjoy it. But for all to say to now is, of course, back to the table.